Feathers up for another Friday lunch break video. I came across a YouTube channel that really drives the point home about Moors, and I was very shocked to hear what was said, and it's a great thing. American Indians have to have a separate identity. When they go to take their birthright, it has to be only American Indians, and furthermore, it has to be the uncivilized Indians. Now, the civilized Indians can do an about face, but it means that they will have to rededicate themselves to the American story that has nothing to do with Mali, because America's civilization predates Mali. So it doesn't even make sense to bring it up. The only reason why an American Indian would bring Mali into this equation is because a Moor needs to be in on your birthright. That's the only reason. You absolutely don't need Mali. Why? Mali is an Islamic country. Big newsflash, no American Indians were ever Islamic. It doesn't even make sense, y'all. It's just the outright ignorance of it all. Mali is not necessary to claim your American birthright. In fact, it's detrimental to claiming your birthright without pulling in some greedy ass Moor who has done nothing but come up against American Indians in every possible way, except with their little flapping big mouths that spend 99.999% of the time lying to American Indians as well as the world, okay? You got to understand what a Moor's goals were. They're thinking of world domination. American Indians can barely stand on their land and have sovereignty. Let them get the world, but you better have America, American Indians. It's just a sad day in their little hell that America won't be part of their little world domination. They really don't like the fact that America will not be part of this, because they have bucked everything on America being the centerpiece of this. So what does that mean? They're willing to genocide all your family that they have called uncivilized. What makes, who said we have to be quote unquote civilized? Was that a church? A church? Okay, so what's the track record of this church? Were they civilized when they sicked Columbus on us? Did he act in a civilized manner? Enslaving people, murdering people? Okay, so who are you to tell me what being civilized is about? But again, the church has already washed their hands. We shouldn't even be talking about the church. Why? They vindicated themselves. They repudiated the doctrine of discovery. March 30th, 2023. The corporation no longer has the ecumenical backing that their laws are built on. What do you mean their laws are built on the church? I mean, the doctrine of discovery is what their laws against Indians are based on. As we say all the time, keep saying it, the three foundational cases that were argued in the Supreme Court, if you can call it an argument, more like a dictatorship to me, The three cases that Judge John Marshall rules on, in which he ruled against the American Indians or for the American Indians who were supposed to make their own decisions regarding what they want on their land. Oh, he took that right. So what did he base his decisions on? The doctrine of discovery. What does that mean? As we always say, when it comes to American Indians or even the Fakians, this system does not go by its own laws, which are bad enough. We know that civil rights ain't nothing but a piece of toilet paper with a piece of doo-doo on it, right? That's what civil rights are. Toilet paper with some shit stain on it. Go ahead and make use of it. See how that worked for you. Yeah. It's only a fraction of the Bill of Rights. We are very repetitive over here, and we have to be. Your mental programming did not happen in a day. So yeah, we are repetitive as well, but we're repetitive in favor of American Indians. And especially the uncivilized ones. You Algonquins out there, you were the uncivilized Indians. They had to go to Muskogee and Iroquois to get what they wanted. You, they cast aside, married into your family so they could say that they're Indians once they got Pocahontas. And then you were no more. You were no more on in the area of the United States when your Virginia was the whole entire United States. Now, it wasn't our Virginia, but that's the area that Powhatan, that's what they were able to get from Chief Powhatan, was his land, which they called Virginia, which was the entire United States practically. From the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific, and down to the top of Mexico, basically, and right where the border changes to Canada. So, yeah, somehow Algonquins got relegated to Canada. That's how bad the United States system did not want to deal with Algonquins. They changed Algonquins into civilized Indians, and that's what became the Iroquois Confederacy and the 5 civilized tribes, and anybody else that needed to be what colonizer needed them to be, and so that they can stake claims on that land. Yes. The United States, its legal system is, again, when it comes to American Indians, they depend on the doctrine of discovery above and beyond all other laws in their United States, any of their states. They go right to the doctrine of discovery because that allows them to dominate Indians without question. Okay? So, yes, I'm so glad to see that there are channels, or at least one, that I found that, as of late, that are boldly and really tearing apart the whole idea of America being Morocco. That's been shredded. Everything, that all the claims that Moors are making are being shredded on this channel. The thing that the channel did bring up for me, though, was it talks about creating trust. Excuse me. Creating trust. And for that, I needed to sort of educate myself a little bit more. I know initially that we are not supposed to be creating anything that is a product of the United States. Okay? So we're going to do a video on that. I found a great website, and we're going to probably do that, if not tonight, tomorrow, because again, this is a lunch break video. But to highlight what the red flags are. So what are we talking about? We're saying that Indians we don't create trust. We reinvent the wheel. Unfortunately, actually, that's a great way to state what American Indians have to do. Do it with pride. Do it with love of your ancestors, honor of your ancestors. You know what? That's going to be the new phrase I use. American Indians have to reinvent the wheel. It's a way to let American Indians know nothing you have experienced in terms of law or legality, or nothing you've experienced for lifetimes applies to you. In other words, everything you've been given, you literally have to give it back in a peaceful manner. You literally have to recreate everything. You literally have to call it something else. We won't even call it a trust, y'all. It won't be registered in a state at all. The most significant thing that I'm seeing about trust, and we will go over this. They're talking about registering it with your state or according to the laws of your state. What do we know about the lands that Indians occupied before states arrived? Indians, get out literally means get the hell out. It doesn't mean, let me take something, just this one thing, and I'll get out. No, you can't. That one thing will be the thing that will pull you back into that jurisdiction that you are getting out of. You don't need it, because you have the sovereignty required to do your own thing. How many times, how many ways can someone say that to a person? Do we understand what starting anew means? Act like you just erased the whole blackboard and you have to start all over again. That's what you have to do. But you will do it in a way where it's going to be simple for you. You see, the corporation purposely complicates things so that you never knew what the hell was going on. Uses words and changes the meaning of words. Like a person is also a corporation. In an American Indian system, there will be no word spells like that. There just won't be. There won't be any word spells. We're going to make it as plain as possible. American Indians, when you pull out, you have to understand there's nothing they can do to stop you once you let them know that you're standing outside of their jurisdiction. If you're standing outside of their jurisdiction and you're talking about a trust, they're going to know you have no idea what you're talking about. Because they wouldn't understand that get out means you don't use anything that you knew. It's not necessary. You begin to take the authority over your land in a peaceful manner. How can it be peaceful? Because what an Indian has a right to do is to communicate to other Indians. what we're going to be doing is getting as many as are willing to be like the pioneers, you might say, in their ability to understand that there's no looking to the corporation for anything. You have to make it and then tell a corporation, this is what we go by. Who's the owner of the land? So we won't be doing any trust, y'all. Again, I'll read some of the highlights. The major things that I flagged. I'll read this because they were okay. One of them was incorporated. A legal trust or trust agreement must be properly funded with assets and registered. What? Do we know what registered means? It means it's not yours. Someone else has it. So, a legal trust is an entity. A what? We don't want any more entities. Because 9 times out of 10, it's some kind of a corporate entity. You're giving something that belongs to men and women to a quote-unquote entity that has been created through a certificate of trust, or a trust agreement properly funded with assets and registered. We don't do registers. We don't register anything. With the appropriate office in the state. It is incorporated. This is why Indians don't do trusts. You're once again, you're involved in commerce. Listen, American Indians, our land is not to be up for commercial gains. The only game we will play with our land is 1, growing our food on our land. 2, possibly renting our land. 3, possibly leasing our land. Oh, we could add a 4. It will always remain American Indians' land. France doesn't have to worry about France being taken away by a foreigner, right? Some will say because they're incorporated. Well, when you're incorporated, that's what makes you able to be taken. Because you're a corporation that can be bought, sold, bankrupt. We don't want any kind of corporate structure around our land. Whatever we do with our land will be written. It will not be incorporated. It will be the written law that American Indians go by. What was that law of our land? It's American Indians. It gets passed down to American Indians. We don't need a trust to do that. We need to have a line that we can trust. We can trust them, but it won't be a trust. You see what I'm saying? We will have to trust the men and women that are going to be left with the task of ensuring that everything stays under American jurisdiction. So we're just going to have to create an American Indian jurisdiction. It won't be a corporation, though. We don't have to play these games, y'all. They came to us because they wanted something we have, right? But they crafted their little scheme in a way where they don't have to compensate us for what we have. In fact, they're just going to get rid of us. Their solution is just genocide them politically or actually. We don't have to pay for their stuff. We're going to put it in a trust because they're no longer here. So we're going to have to administer their trust. No, we're going to always be here. We don't need a trust because we're going to always be here. Okay, American Indians? That's the general idea. So what does that mean? We're going to have to find men and women, American Indians, that can be trained to pass this down. So we will have some kind of a assembly of American Indians, a gathering. Let's call it a gathering because assembly is already taken, right? Let's call it a gathering, the gathering, where the elders who are not Moors, if they identify as Moors, they are not eligible to be in these power positions. And they will have to be vetted, y'all. You will literally have to do a history to find out how much of their life has been dedicated to being a Moor, because trust and believe they will try to creep that bullshit back in. So you want men and women who have not been morally indoctrinated whatsoever. That's what you'll be vetting. It would be great if they weren't Christians or Hebrew Israelites as well. They're going to be bringing foreign narratives with them about, oh, we have to be saved. No. Have we ever felt safe? When you're saved, should an element of safety come with that? By and large, have American Indians ever been safe in America? Protected? We were saved, right? When a savior saves you, you're protected. You know, is the idea. So what good is if you have some kind of airy-fairy thing that happens after you die, but while you're here, it ain't nothing going on but rent? You paying for rent on your own land when you should be the rentor, not the rentee, I guess is what they would call it. So that's the first red flag. Assets within a trust are taxed. Now that's, in other words, you can say, but we're Indians, not taxed. But you're in a structure that is normally taxed. So that means it's going to have to be tax exempt because you're still using their system. When you create a system, that won't even be part of it. You see what I'm saying? So you building a quote unquote trust in this system. This is what is going to have to be dealt with. In an American Indian system, it won't be a question. We won't need to deal with it because it won't be a part of it. We won't have to get a certificate. We won't have to register. That won't be part of whatever we do. That's why we don't want a trust, because these are elements of a trust, a basic trust. All right. By working with an experienced estate planning lawyer. American Indians won't have lawyers. Lawyers are esquires that work for the British corporation. So they wouldn't have our best interests. In fact, we don't need them because that law system, that legal system is not ours. We would have to have trained men and women in our guidelines. Whatever we make law. When you're a sovereign, please understand, you make up your laws. It's really so simple. You do not borrow from some other sovereign that is a corporation, because you're not trying to be a corporation. It's really so simple. So we saw the word registered. A trust cannot be used to shield the property from creditors. So if an Indian creates a trust and he's still tied to the system, the corporate system of the United States, your creditors can come for you. Their creditors can come for you because you're in their system. Let's say that again. A trust cannot be used to shield property from creditors or to elicit illegal activities. Wait a minute. So you mean that an Indian goes through the trouble of creating a trust in this system, but if somehow some of these Indians are still tied to this system and they are seen as owing, like the federal United States citizens are supposed to pay the debts of the United States, so you're still subject to creditors that will say, "Oh, I don't care about your trust. You owe me." That's part of a trust, y'all. We don't want to be tied to anything that will do that or has the capability to do it. It won't be a question once we create our own version of what they're calling a trust. We're going to call it something else. We're going to call it something else because we really don't want to mix up with their system at all. We don't want them to say, "Oh, look, they have a trust like ours." It ain't going to be like yours, and it's not, so we're not going to use that word. Let's see. The trust must be validly executed according to state law. Only the Indians who get what I'm saying, do you understand why that's a problem? Do you understand that you're not tied to a state, so you don't want to tie anything to a state? You have ancestral land that a state is infringing upon. The state just sat itself there. We had nothing to do with the states being here. In fact, the states crossed our linguistic boundaries. So, in other words, a part of North Carolina was Iroquois, according to, the way they have it, and another part of it was Algonquin. So until Iroquois start to identify with their Algonquin roots again, why would we share a state? We were in the division and in colonization, we were made enemies. Why would we share the same state? In our system, we wouldn't have done that. The Iroquois would have had their part, and we would have had their part, until we decide to make amends with each other. And the big crime in all of this is that none of those amends will ever be made if we don't address them. But they're still there. That's like America, or I should say the United States, declaring a war, but never undeclaring the war. So you're still at war. And those who know you still are at war, you might not know you're at war, but they will keep acting as if they're at war. So, whoever Negroes out there who were Iroquois, they would have to come out of hiding to say, we no longer want to be the biggest enemy of Algonquins. So what can we do to work together? It's really so simple. But again, the states as they are now, they ignored the territories of the Indians. So in other words, you're making sure that one part of town is really at odds with another part of town, when If it were Indians, it wouldn't be the same town. We would know the delineation. Our territories, if we make them all Algonquin again, we won't have a problem. But if some Indians feel like they want to remain at enmity with Algonquins, because that's the Indians that got basically ejected from their lands in the South and called basically as if they're only from Canada. Okay? So I think that was enough for now. We're at the 30-minute mark. You just get a sneak peek, but we'll try to look at the whole article. It's actually an attorney, a trust attorney, I believe. He's assistant general counsel with Trust and Wills at his the firm he works at. So this is just a taste for us to know that we got to do something else, y'all. We're reinventing the wheel, okay? American Indians must reinvent the wheel for American Indians only. Again, when you're operating in private, any foreigner can do that. So Indians have to separate from that. You have to take the authority, and then you'll be able to begin to be able to generate your compensation. But as long as you're sort of 1 foot in the corporation and 1 foot out, there's going to be it's going to be conflict. It's a conflict of interest. One is for Indians and one is not. And the sooner that American Indians get real with that reality, that's the only reality that we can honestly say has shown itself abundantly. The fact that we're called black, it shows itself abundantly. The corporation does not do Indians unless they can somehow reshape them into something that's under their jurisdiction. Can an Indian work with an entity like that? No, they cannot. You must reinvent the wheel. Reinvent the wheel. Whatever they have in their system that you think you need in yours, you're going to reinvent it like they reinvented us. Thank you for watching. Until next time.